Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Angelicia, and I am a proud volunteer advocate with the Redan and the Social Action Committee at St. Paul AME Worship Center. As a community advocate, my goal is to share information that empowers all of us, especially about how participating in the voting process can make a positive difference in the daily lives. Tonight's forum is designed to help us better understand the important role of the Public Service Commissioner and how the decisions made in the position directly affect our homes, our utilities, and our communities. Tonight, we have three distinguished speakers. Karen Davenport she's PSC DeKalb volunteer, Dr. Jackie, a pediatric infectious disease specialist, and Lisa Coronado, climate environmental advocate. These speakers will provide valuable information about the Public Service Commission. Please put questions that you may have regarding these presentations in the chat, and we will answer your questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Our first presenter will be Karen Davenport, who will discuss the responsibilities and roles of the Public Service Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. This evening, I'm going to share with you some information that Chastity Malloy, who is the campaign manager for the Get Out the Vote and voting rights programs of the Georgia Conservation Voters, has prepared and put together. I want to talk with you about the key responsibilities for the Public Service Commission, how those terms are structured, means how long they serve in those positions, and what is at stake in Georgia when it comes to voting on November 4th, a few days left in this election, the November 4th election on next month. So these are some key things that we think is important for you to know. The Georgia Public Service Commission, PSC, is a 5-person elected body that regulates the services provided by investor-owned telecommunications, natural gas, and electric utilities, and directly regulates the rates charged by Atlanta Gas, Light, and Georgia Power. Now, just to expand on this a little, telecommunications would apply to anyone that has a landline. Natural gas, of course, includes anyone who has gas power utilities in their house. And Georgia Power is an investor-owned utility in Georgia, but it is not the only way that Georgians receive their utilities in the state. We also have EMCs, which are electric membership cooperatives, and some folks pay their utilities through their city, and those are called MEADs. One of the most important things the Commission does for electricity is the Integrated Resource Plan, where they make decisions about how Georgia Power should generate electricity. The rate case is where they decide how much Georgia Power customers, as us, should pay for it and how much profit the company should make. They also have the power, the Public Service Commission has the power to veto any rate increases. The PSC plays a critical role in shaping the Georgia's energy future, from setting electricity rates to approving renewable energy projects. The PSC decisions impact our environment, the economy, and everyday lives. Now, this is where, Georgia Power makes an appeal to the Public Service Commissioners to decide how much the customers will be charged on our bills. That rate that they decide really makes a difference for how much we end up paying and how much profit the company should make. Just a reminder, the Public Service Commission definitely can decide to veto these rates, and that's really important for you to remember. Now on this slide, there's an outline of how are some of the key responsibilities of the PSC. Again, they approve the utility rate changes and fee structures. They approve the integrated resource plan, how much we're paying. They regulate monopoly utilities like Georgia Power. Unfortunately, if you live in an area that's serviced by Georgia Power, it's not like your phone. You can't decide that you're not going to get power from you can't decide if you're going to get power from someplace else. They establish policies that support renewable energy and energy efficiency. This is what they are supposed to do under their key responsibilities. And keep that in mind as we go through the information the rest of this evening. They resolve territorial disputes involving utilities and railroads. So when you look at the structure and the terms of the PSC, the commissioners serve 6-year terms. That's quite a long time. The elections are staggered. The candidates run for specific districts. This year, we'll talk a little bit about the people, the 2 districts that we're voting on, District 2 and 3. The chair of the commission rotates, and commissioners make over $120,000 a year. Keep that in mind when you look at how much they're making and what their key responsibilities are, and look at the decisions that they're making in reference to their designated key responsibilities. Next slide. So the Public Service Commission they're supposed to protect the residents from high utility bills and from dangerous energy policies. Instead, our current public service commissioners have approved very expensive projects. Since 2023, the Public Service Commission has increased bills 6 times, raising the average monthly bill to $43, which equals almost $500 yearly. As I said earlier, Georgia Power is an investor-owned utility, and it's the only electricity provider for nearly 3 million households and businesses. And the Georgia Constitution guarantees its profits. So the PSC, they rely on expensive, dangerous fuels like the burning of methane gas and coal, when actually, Georgia has other options that they could use considering we have so much sunlight. Georgians pay the second highest price for gas-generated power. Energy-hungry industries like crypto mining and data centers, they're currently proposing tens of billions worth of projects in Georgia, and these proposals would collectively use 75% of all of Georgia households. And instead of using this demand as an opportunity to invest in safe, lower cost fuels like solar or wind, Georgia Power wants to use more gas, more coal, and increases our bills. Public utility regulators often go unnoticed, even though they have a significantly negative influence on U.S. emissions. Next slide. So again, we're looking at Georgia Power. The PSC has allowed Georgia Power to go unchecked for air pollution. When we look at the plant Cheniere plant, it's the #1 most carbon polluting power plant in the nation. It's produced more carbon dioxide than the total energy related emissions of Maine, and it's still a top polluter and one of the most deadly. What happens? They are also causing ongoing water pollution from coal ash. Millions of tons of coal ash are currently being stored in unlined ponds, leaking into our groundwater, and there's an increased energy burden and the cost of power bills. These continued investments in dirty energy sources have polluted the air and waterways, and they're very expensive to clean up, and they're driving up our power bills. Next slide. This is just an outline of how our bills have increased, what the Georgia Public Service Commission has allowed Georgia Power to do to raise the bills nonstop for years in the last 5 years alone. And if you see in terms of each year, it's increased little by little. And what the projection is to continue in this format. Next slide. When you look at this map, if you put them one on top of the other one, it sort of outlines the households that are in Georgia that are really carrying the highest energy burden. And those areas that are carrying the highest energy burden are being serviced by Georgia Power. This has a lot of effect on the citizens because it has an increase in the rates makes it more difficult for many people to pay their bills. And what happens is it also makes it a big projection of people who may have their power turned off, which can be a health issue, as well as an issue that may make it very difficult for some people to even have power. Next slide. This is the composition of our current public service commissioners. This year, District 2 and 3 are up for elections in November the 4th. That's Fitz Johnson's place and Tim Echols' place. And we have other candidates that are running for those two positions. The current chair is Jason Shaw. Next slide. So just a reminder in terms of the public service districts, the Georgia General Assembly, the people who are our representatives at the Georgia Dome, created 5 public service commission districts. And candidates for a particular seat must live in that district. But the voting is statewide. So that means all registered voters, if you have an aunt that lives in Barnesville, Georgia, or a cousin that lives in Greenville, Georgia, everybody can vote. If you have someone who is getting their power from the EMC, they can vote, or if they're getting their power from the city. So it's really, really important that everyone is able to cast a ballot to decide who gets to represent their interest in how their utilities are regulated. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it back to Ms. Farrell.
Thank you, Karen, for that very important information. And now we're going to have a presentation by Dr. Jaggi, and she will discuss how the Public Service Commission impacts your health and your safety.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. You can go to the next slide. So sometimes people really talk about why caring about this election is cost of electricity, how our system works. And I'm going to talk to you about climate change and your health, because the decisions that are made by the public service commissioners profoundly affect your health, your well-being, and your safety. And you can go to the next slide. I'm going to introduce you to this concept that is called One Health. And One Health is the idea that the health of people is connected to the health of animals and our shared environment. So I'm an infectious disease doctor. I see patients with infections. And this concept of One Health actually started in the 1800s when a famous physician, really kind of noted that a human being could get cowpox, or you can get an infection from an animal. So that was that idea of that the health of an animal and a human being is connected. And now we know that actually our health is also connected to the health of our environment. If our environment is flooding, or our environment, we have mold in our home, or we have things like that, a huge storm or a drought, we cannot live healthy lives. So we need a healthy planet to live healthy lives. You can go to the next slide. So this slide, the lines here, the pretty colors that you see, each stripe that's going vertically represents a year of global average temperature. So this is what one of the climate scientists put together. And it goes back all the way to 1850. And what you can see here is it's more blue on one side, and now it's becoming more red. And that's because our global average temperatures, so that's an average over time, are becoming higher. And that is because since 1850, we have been putting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And that gets trapped in the atmosphere that Mrs. Coronado is going to talk about. But this is changing, and this is changing our risk for extreme weather. So this is a big problem. It causes lots of different problems. And so it's easy to kind of just say, well, you know, sometimes it's nice outside, so this is not happening. And it's easy to just kind of not think about it like, this is fine, everything's fine. But it's a really big problem, and it's a hard problem that can be difficult to deal with. You can go to the next slide. And over 200 medical journals, so over 200 famous journals in medicine, they all decided to publish on the same day, the same exact editorial. And that editorial said that the rapidly warming climate is the greatest threat to global public health because we're risking more and more extreme weather. And they said that we are risking catastrophic harm to health that could be impossible to reverse. So I think about this as the elephant in the room. This is a really big problem that we just don't talk about very much. You can go to the next slide. What happens when you have warmer air is everything on the water cycle. Water is supposed to, you know, evaporate from the earth, and then the clouds fill up with water, and then it precipitates, so it rains, and then it evaporates again. So that's the water cycle, or the hydrologic cycle. Everything along that gets actually more and more extreme. So we have more heavy rains, we have more drought, and that creates a host of problems. You can go to the next slide. And this is just a picture of what they sometimes call these atmospheric rivers or rain bombs, where the rain is just coming down torrentially in a very short period of time. And this is something that happened in Phoenix last year. But I want to show you a couple of the effects about how does it affect our health. So it can affect us because it can displace us from our homes. We know that happened in Hurricane Katrina 20 years ago, profoundly affecting the lives of those people. We know the little mosquito there. Mosquitoes like to breed in standing water. So when we have heavy water that just can't get back into our streams and our oceans, the mosquito can breed in it. And mosquitoes breed really bad things like malaria and dengue and other illnesses that we see, especially in the summer months. And we know that it also makes diarrheal illnesses worse. There's pretty good data that after we have pretty extreme water events, storming events, more people come to get cared for because they have diarrhea. And we know that people die from these storms. So these little babies, they actually were only 1 month old, and they died during Hurricane Helene. They were the youngest victims of Hurricane Helene, and they died in the bed with their mom, who also unfortunately died with them. So we know that these extreme weather events really people don't even come to the hospital because they can't make it to the hospital when we have extreme weather. You can go to the next slide. And this is from a medical journal, and it's the journal Science, which is a pretty famous scientific journal. And what they talk about here is that our kids who are born more recently have higher risk of extreme weather exposure in their life than those of us that were born in the past. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you see these bars, and you see the lifetime heat wave exposure for somebody born in 1960. And then you see what's in a person born in 2020. And you can see the yellow, orange, and red bars are higher than for the person born in 1960, but also that the more that the world warms, the higher risk of lifetime heat exposure those kids that were born in 2020 are going to have. And so on the right-hand side, you can see those different colors are representing how warm the world is. So the red one at the top is the warmest world. And so for me, born in the 1970s, for my kids born in the 2000s, they're going to have a higher risk of lifetime heat exposure in this graph. But that also is going to be, I didn't show you all the graphs and pictures in this journal article, but there are more that also show increased risk for other kinds of severe weather. You can go to the next slide. And we know that this has downstream effects. What do I mean by downstream effects? Downstream effects means that when there is a storm in one place, we have medical supplies and drugs and really important things that come from these areas that get disrupted. So in 2017, there was a very, very big hurricane in Puerto Rico. And 2,900 people died in that hurricane. And we also had shortages of critical medical supplies in the mainland United States because of this hurricane. And actually, during Hurricane Helene, in North Carolina, there is a factory that produces saline, which is really, really important, life-saving fluids for us when we come to the hospital. And that plant where they make that saline actually got decimated. And so we had saline shortages in our hospital. And many, many hospitals across the country had the same thing. So extreme weather can really threaten our drug supply and our medical supplies, which really affects more people than are just being affected by a specific storm. You can go to the next slide. So the burning of fossil fuels and other environmental manipulation leads to direct effects on our health, like air pollution. So a pollutant is just anything made by humans that harms our health. That is just what a pollutant is. Air pollution, there are some specific, like we sometimes call it soot pollution or particulate matter pollution, that really causes a lot of problems. So this is Ella Kissy-Debra. She died of air pollution in London. She lived near a very, very major roadway. We know that some of our kids die from heat exposure. At the bottom left is Imani Bell, and she was practicing a basketball practice a few years ago. She lived in Jonesboro, and she died of extreme heat and heat stroke. We know some kids will die of extreme weather, like this little boy died in Queens, New York, when there was just extreme flooding at his apartment in Queens, New York. And this little boy named Zachary, and our little 1-month-old twins that just died at Hurricane Helene. So we know that extreme weather really, really hurts us directly when a storm comes. We also know that there are indirect effects of climate change, because things like that mosquito or a tick that transmit infections, or warmer waters that cause more infections. This picture of the hand here is a person who had a kind of a more rare infection called Vibrio vulnificus, because the water is getting warm all along the eastern coast of the United States. And we know it can lead to hunger, it can lead to decreased quality of life, and also it can lead to anxiety, and especially for young people. You can go to the next slide. There are a couple of really nice papers about what does air pollution do, especially soot pollution is what we can typically call it. And it affects from a mom having a baby too early, a baby being born too small, to childhood outcomes like asthma, autism, cancer. And in adulthood, we know that if there's more soot pollution and other kind of pollution in the air, the more risk for heart attack and stroke that people have. So air pollution really affects all of us, and it's in our best interest to try to decrease air pollution for our health. You can go to the next slide. I want to show you a little bit about what happened in 1996 when the Olympics were here. During the Olympics period, we actually, we drove a lot less, and they started doing some traffic counts and things like that about how much people were driving and how much air pollution was in the air. And you can see in the blue bars here, some of those air pollution measures were a lot lower during that 2-week Olympic period. And we know that kids coming into the hospital for asthma, that decreased by about 40% during that 2-week period. But other kinds of illnesses just stayed the same. And then when we started driving more and there was more burning of gasoline from our cars, then our rates of asthma went up. So this is really showed us that even just in Atlanta, that air pollution really affects health. You can go to the next slide. And we know that youth are experiencing climate anxiety. These are some surveys that were done of people that are 16 to 25 years of age. The one on the left is for people all over the world, 10,000 people. And you can see that in the orange or red, most people are concerned about climate change. And when we ask in the 50 states, you can see Georgia here, about 23% of people 16 to 25 are extremely worried about climate change because they see what is happening and they are worried about their future. So this is, I think, a good reason to have us, really show up and try to do anything that we can to make this better for them. You can go to the next slide. So what is going on with energy? And I want to show you a couple of things that are being done in some hospital systems across the country. You can go to the next slide. because we know if we go to clean energy, when you have solar energy, there is no soot pollution, there is no noise pollution, there is no radioactive pollution. So it's just simply going to be better for our health. This is the Gunderson Health System in Wisconsin. They have a lot of solar panels on their roof. They save about $100,000 a year, and they decreased that. This takes away about 10% of their need to get their power from a central electric provider. We know that some hospitals are working on energy efficiency. When we talk about efficiency, that's the best thing that we can do to decrease the amount of energy that fossil fuels we need to burn, is just by making things more efficient. So some hospitals are just working on making their systems more efficient so that they don't need so much energy, and that we can do in our own households. You can go to the next slide. This is actually Sarasota, Florida, and this is 2 days after a major hurricane went to their area. But this community had a lot of solar panels and very resiliently built homes. And you can see people walking in their area just 2 days after a hurricane. So it can also keep us resilient if we have extreme weather. You can go to the next slide. The Boston Medical Center, they actually put all these solar panels on their roof, and they actually generate solar power energy, and they give energy credits to people that have really expressed that they have difficulty paying their power bills. And they are actually able to relieve some people's power bills by just creating these energy credits on their roof. You can go to the next slide. So how is solar doing in Georgia? It's about 7% of our energy mix, about 0.4%, so less than 1% of Georgia households have rooftop solar. We don't have something called net metering that makes it easier for people to kind of pay off their panels. I have solar panels on my house, but it takes me longer to pay off my investment that I needed to put those panels up, because we don't have net metering, which makes me able to sell my energy to the grid for this about the same prices that I buy it when it's at night and I need to buy from their grid. So if we had net metering, that would probably incentivize people to get more solar in their homes. So we could have more solar on our hospitals, in my opinion. We could have more solar on warehouses, on big box stores. And solar, again, it doesn't emit any carbon pollution, any noise pollution, any radioactive pollution. So it is going to be better for our health, both for climate change and then the pollution that's in the air itself and also in the water. You can go to the next slide. So, sometimes I think when we want to think about the world that we want, we sometimes don't write all the steps down that we need to do in order to get that world. So this little cartoon is saying, you writing this equation of a math, and then you just say there's a miracle in here someplace. And the other guy is saying, I think you need to be a little more explicit. So I would say for us, if we care about these issues, that we should be voting number 1. We should be telling our friends to vote number 2. We should be telling more friends number 3. And number 4, we should be telling more friends, telling them why is this so important. Because to me, health is so important, because I see people who are sick. My husband is a cancer doctor. When somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, their life stops. Everything is not important excepting their illness. And I think this is really, really important. And I hope that you all will kind of try to help communicate about this to your communities as well. Less than 1% of active voters actually turned out in the primaries for this election. So it's really not expected to be a huge turnout this fall. So I have written a couple of articles to just try to get my community to vote and tell them why it's so important. It does mean that your vote will probably go further and more impactful than some other elections, because not as many people turn out for these kind of lesser known elections. And you can go to the next slide. So I think about, the world that we want to build, a beautiful, stable, healthy world that we want, especially for the children in our community. And I think about them like building something. And these are all mosaics of the Mona Lisa. And you can see that there are fewer tiles on the left-hand side than the right-hand side. So each vote is like a tile on a mosaic. And I think we can create a more beautiful world together by learning about how these issues impact us and then taking action in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jackie, for that presentation. me being an oncology social worker, that really aligns with some of the things that we've been hearing. So thank you so very much for the informative presentation. Now we'll have Lisa Carnado, who will address how a Public Service Commission affects the climate and the environment.
Next slide, please. So we're now at a truly critical moment for our climate on our planet. For decades, the global scientific community has been warning that the main driver of global warming has been the burning of fossil fuels, which releases gases, primarily carbon and methane, that warm our planet. Next slide, please. Now, these gases accumulate in the atmosphere and they act like a blanket around the Earth, trapping some of the heat from the sun that would normally radiate back out into space. I love that picture. That's from a UN site. Next, please. In 2015, nearly every nation signed the Paris Climate Agreement, committing to substantially reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the goal was to keep the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, but actively pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. I think many of you might have heard 1.5 to stay alive. Next slide, please. So there was a lot of rejoicing when the Paris Climate Agreement was adopted. It was a landmark accord, which followed decades of failed attempts to unite the world on climate change. Next slide, please. But those who are making great profits from the burning of fossil fuels, including utilities like Georgia Power and their parent company, Southern Company, have used all their usual tricks to prevent action. They have spent lots of money spreading disinformation about the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. And they've spent massive amounts of money to lobby against any policies and legislation that would have led to greenhouse gas reductions. And they have made big campaign donations to politicians who voted for their interests. So little progress has been made. We're currently on target for 2 degrees Celsius warming by 2050, and then the truly horrific warming level of around 3 degrees Celsius by 2100. Next slide, please. So the climate impacts at both 2 degrees Celsius and 3 degrees Celsius of warming would be horrible. Climate scientists say that it would be a remarkably changed world, a more uncomfortable world. There'd be massive human suffering, displacement, and death as climate impacts escalate. I'm not going to go into all of those impacts, but there is a great TED Ed video that presents the scientific findings of what the world would look like in the next 30 to 80 years if we continue on this current path. It's called What's Happening If We Do Nothing. If you Google that and TED Ed video, you'll find it. I really encourage you to watch it. It's bleak, but it's worth watching if you want to more fully understand what so many are working so hard to avoid. Next slide, please. But it's not just climate scientists warning us. Top insurance executives are warning that unless we rapidly transition away from fossil fuels, vast regions of the planet could become uninsurable. That would threaten financial markets and global economic stability. And the economics have weighed in and said that the cost of inaction far outweighs the efforts and costs to transition to clean energy now. Next slide, please. Fortunately, we can still take action now to prevent reaching those really horrific warming levels and the worst impacts. But we have to take rapid action. Last year, the UN Secretary General gave a speech where he made these statements. The need for action is unprecedented, but so is the opportunity, not just to deliver on climate, but on economic prosperity and sustainable development. It's climate crunch time. All depends on the decisions leaders take or fail to take especially in the next 18 months. Next slide, please. So in Georgia, the 5 elected members of the Georgia Public Service Commission are the leaders who will have the most impact in our state regarding climate change. And the reason is because cleaning up the electric grid is a critical first step to meeting critical greenhouse gas reduction targets. And they regulate Georgia Power, who's in charge of most of the electricity production in the state of Georgia. Next slide, please. A whopping 25% of all greenhouse gas emissions comes from the burning of fossil fuels to generate electricity. We have to get that down ASAP. Next slide, please. And reducing emissions in other sectors requires switching from technologies powered by fossil fuels to ones that run efficiently on electricity generated by renewable sources. Next slide. Unfortunately, our current commissioners are doing exactly the opposite of what they need to be doing. They recently approved Georgia Power's request to delay their promised retirement of coal plants. And next slide, please. And in December, all signs are that they will vote to approve Georgia Power's massive data center expansion plan that includes a lot of gas. So let's break that headline down a bit. Next slide. It is a massive expansion. They're asking to add 10 gigawatts of additional energy generating capacity by 2031, just 5 years from now. Currently, Georgia Power's generating capacity is just around 22 gigawatts. So you can see that's a massive amount of additional energy. And it is for data centers. Data centers, the vast majority of which have not yet signed contracts, are driving 95% of this request. So this extra capacity may not even be needed. Next slide. And it is almost all gas. It involves building 5 brand new, extremely expensive gas burning power plants, purchasing power from other gas burning plants, and battery storage that is tied mostly to gas and coal. Next slide, please. So multiple sources report that Georgia Power could become one of the top greenhouse gas emitters in the US if its proposed 2025 energy plan is fully implemented. So that little image, that's what I look like when I found out about this plan. What about Tim Echols, who's running for re-election? How did he feel? Next slide. In a commission press release, he was quoted as saying, "This integrated resource plan puts us on the right path to meet everyone's needs. I wish it had more solar, more storage, more energy efficiency, but it strikes a good compromise in the spirit of collaboration." Next slide, please. I think all of us have to ask why. Why are the commissioners voting on and supporting a plan that is so clearly bad for Georgians? Next slide. I think the answer has a lot to do with the fact that commissioners are remaining willfully ignorant of the climate science. And this is particularly disturbing to me, Preeti, and others who have gone down to the commissioners and presented tons of data and facts about how bad it is to burn fossil fuels. Well, recently, despite that, Commissioner Echols told Emory students that climate change hasn't impacted Georgia much. Next slide. So tell that to our coastal communities struggling with sea level rise. Tell that to Hurricane Helene's victims. Fueled by record warm ocean waters, it damaged over 200,000 homes and took 37 lives in Georgia alone. That's a picture of a house in Valdosta. And I know that many of us were keeping track, and we know that Georgia, by comparison to North Carolina, we got by pretty easily. Next slide. he also should be able to explain that to our farmers who've suffered massive crop losses due to storms like Helene and due to stretches of abnormally warm winter weather. Next slide. So Fitz Johnson is out on the campaign trail. He's also running for re-election, and he's campaigning against the radical Democratic climate agenda. And he, next slide, please. Sorry, us. What he calls radical is what many states and most of the rest of the world are aiming for in an attempt to reduce greenhouse gas reductions in line with the Paris Agreement. Because people just don't want to take actions now that will create warming levels that will devastate their kids, grandkids, and all future generations. Next slide. But it's not just about doing it for the right reason. It's investing in clean, renewable energy also makes economic sense. In the US last year, over 90% of the new generating capacity came from solar, wind, and batteries to store that power. And that's because renewables are now the cheapest option in most markets. And the cost of renewables keeps dropping due to advances in technology. It is really irresponsible to invest in hugely expensive gas infrastructure now that will lock us into natural gas and its volatile pricing for decades. Next slide, please. Oh, another reason that they might be supporting Georgia Power plans is because they're not accepting their responsibility to address the climate crisis. Commissioner Echols told Emory students that whether it's 1, 2, 3 degrees Celsius or whatever, that's not in my lane. Next slide, please. Well, according to the rules and regulations of the state of Georgia, it is clearly in his lane. Here's just a little copy of the portion that applies to the IRP planning. You probably can't read the small writing there, but it says that the commission can approve, reject in part, or provide an alternate plan upon determining that it is in the public interest. And clearly, it's in the public interest to address climate change before we reach these horrific levels of warming. Another reason that might be leading to the commissioners supporting plans put forth by Georgia Power comes down to money. The headline says a lot. Georgia Public Service Commission incumbents take the majority of their campaign money from regulated utility interests. Next slide. So we need new leaders on the commission. And fortunately, there are 2 amazing candidates running for the Public Service Commission. Next slide. Peter Hubbard is a clean energy expert with plans to lower power bills through smart investments in renewable solutions. That includes low-cost solar and battery storage, virtual power plants, energy efficiency programs, and market-based capacity sharing. I've had the opportunity to speak several times with Peter, and he is so smart and so knowledgeable and so ready to take on Georgia Power and make sure that they're making decisions that are the best for us. Next slide. I encourage everybody, go to his website, peterforgeorgia.com. You will be extremely impressed by what he has done already, testifying before the Georgia Public Service Commission, and you will learn a ton about the Public Service Commission and about what we can do right now in Georgia to transition rapidly to clean energy sourcing. Next slide. And Dr. Alicia Johnson, she has over 30 years of public advocacy experience. That's something that none of the current commissioners have. She'll stand up to Georgia Power's efforts to maximize profits by burning more fossil fuels at our expense. Next slide. I'm particularly looking forward to the two of them getting elected and taking action with, as Dr. Jaggi was mentioning, with regards to rooftop solar. Our sunny state ranks 47th out of 50 states for per capita rooftop solar. And that is a problem directly tied to commissioners failing to require fair rates when solar owners sell electricity back to the grid. And that means we're losing out on a lot of the benefits of rooftop solar. More rooftop solar would mean more power during power outages. If your neighbor has solar and battery storage, then during a storm, they're going to have electricity. And that means neighbors can provide shelter for neighbors during these outages. I know that as an empty nester this year, I have a lot of extra space in my refrigerator. And if the power was to go out and I had solar in my roof, which I don't just because of the great tree canopy, I would absolutely go to my neighbors and say, do you have anything you want to store in the refrigerator in case you'll lose it with the power outage? And another thing is that this reduces rooftop solar with all these people generating their own electricity, reduces demand on the grid. And so that really reduces the need for these gas and coal plants that are so expensive. And that investment in them is for 45 years. It's just not the time. If we get more rooftop solar, we will not have that need to invest in and spend so much money on these climate warming gas and coal plants. Next slide. So if we can capture 2 seats now, that sets us up for full control of the Public Service Commission next year, when another great candidate will, we have a chance to get to pose another great candidate for the commission. And if that happens, when that happens, then the commissioners can quickly push for a major reconfiguration from fossil fuels to renewables and grid efficiency. That would be just so important right now for us to be able to move in that direction. Next slide. And if Peter and Alicia win, that would be big national news. It would elevate concerns about climate change, and it could inspire other people in other states to fight their own utilities and their utilities' massive fossil fuel expansion plans to power data centers. Next slide. So we need a win. Flipping these 2 seats would be huge and create a blue wave narrative for 2026. And winning the seats will give much needed momentum to get other clean energy, climate action advocates elected next year, and opens up the Georgia governor race and all of the down ballot races. Next slide, although I think that's the last one. Thank you.
So Lisa and Preeti, thank you so much for the information that you shared. At the beginning of this information session, we really kind of emphasized that this presentation is being presented by the St. Paul AME Worship Center, their Social Action Committee, and the Redan-19 Community. And the electronics and everything that the electronics and everything that have been producing this have been provided by the DeKalb Democratic Committee. You know, our goal has been to bring information to you as community members. We wanted to make sure that you had all the information you need in terms of the Public Service Commission, how it's structured, what their goals are, and how they are supposed to be serving us as a community. Our goal is to give you information about the candidates and everyone who is running, but you as citizens have to decide who you would vote for or who you think would help you the most. At this time, I want to turn this over to Joyce Reed, who is an active member in the Redan-19 community.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. We're coming to the end now, and we just like to thank each and every one of you for joining us, also our panelists, and all that great information that we just received. And I'm hoping that you heard something that you learned and also can carry it out and spread this to other people in our neighborhoods, in our community, in this state, in this city. It is very important right now for us to make some decisions if we plan for a future for our young ones that are coming along. You know, I need you. My family needs you. There are individual people out there that need you. And as we stand together, we can get to that line. And one way to do that is by voting. By voting. You heard two things that are facts that are happening right now. And that is we got an energy problem with the fossil fuels and all that. That's happening right now in our state, Georgia. It is affecting our cities, our county, and our community. There are people that are being sick. There are people that are working in these fields. And all these things are happening because maybe we don't have the right one in office. That means what? You got to check the integrity of the people that are running for these positions. Right now, this PSC that we're doing right now forum, a lot of people don't think it's important, but it is. You think about your utility bill and how high it is. Can you afford it? Well, you got people making that decision for you. They're in that office for 5 years. So I'm asking you right now to help me, help you, help your family, help the ones that are coming along to do better. We can if we unite together, because power is in uniting together, and take a walk to that door where you can on October the 14th for early voting. You say you don't have time, but see, you can make 5 minutes of your time, walk in there with an ID and go to a machine, look at it, print it, then go to the scanner, and it's done. It is done. And right now, the early voting, when I say October the 14th, it's through the 31st. It is not necessarily at your precinct. You got several locations to go to. So we ask you to look on the webinar or go to the link. It will give you those locations. It will tell you where you need to go. But first of all, make sure you are registered. A lot of people have been dumped because they have not voted in a while. And you might have been unluckily taken off because they made a mistake. But go ahead on and look. Tell someone else to get up and move, because we can win if we unite together and do what we need to do. We also discussed with you about the fossil fuel, how the climate change has affected us. And you all know that I will not call the counties or states where it is happening right here in Georgia. Most of you already know, but there are a few people that do not know. So it takes you to communicate. It takes me to communicate. It takes us together to make this change, and we can do it. We can win if you get out there and vote in this early election to bring the our time up, because right now, thinking that the PSC is not important, nobody really cares. But you should care, because it's affecting our lives. We got people that is in the office right now, we're not sure about. Do they have the knowledge? Look what's happening. Our utility bills is steady growing, and it's already saying that it's going to grow some more. Can you afford it? Can you afford the heat this winter? Can you afford, or do you not remember how it was when it was warm, whether or not you had to make the decision to cut it off, run a fan, or not do anything but raise your window? Do you remember these things? I tell you, it's very important for us to communicate to our people, to our neighbors, to individual people, that are not only suffering, but have lack of knowledge of what is happening around us. You got October the 14th for the early. You got November the 4th to make that final decision. You have the absentee ballot that you can go ahead right now and fill it out, send it in, and they're going to send back to you that form to make your own decision what you want to do for November the 4th. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Get involved. Get involved. Our ancestors before us have made this road so clear to us. Are we going to fail now? Are we going to fail our children and my grandchild? Are you going to fail your children and your grandchildren and the children to come? Please say no. Help me help you. Go on right now. Get in line. Go to that door. I can tell you it's not going to be a whole lot of people if you go right on in now, October the 14th, and do. Again, look online. Look on the websites. If you have questions, we have that in the chat. So you can call any of us. We will seek and find you that direction you need to go. And don't forget, please learn about these candidates. Learn what they're going to do for us or for you. If that's not the one, you got a choice. You got a choice. Make that choice and join me and others. Do what is best for our future and for our children. Thank you guys for helping us tonight. Thank you. We love you. Have a good evening.